February 28, 1997. It began as a mundane Friday morning in the sun-drenched San Fernando Valley. But at 9:17 a.m., the mundane was shattered by the staccato roar of automatic rifle fire. Two men, Larry Phillips Jr. and Emil Matassarianu, clad in heavy self-made body armor stitched together from aramid fibers and steel plates, had just attempted to rob the Bank of America branch on Laurel Canyon Boulevard. As the first patrol car from the Los Angeles Police Department arrived, its two officers were met not with fleeing suspects, but with a prepared, military-style ambush. Phillips, armed with a modified AK-47 variant, and Matassarianu, wielding a Bushmaster AR-15 rifle illegally converted to full auto, opened fire. The patrol car was instantly shredded, its windows vaporized, and its bodywork punctured by dozens of high-velocity rifle rounds. The officers, armed with their standard-issue Beretta 92 FS 9mm pistols, desperately returned fire, only to witness a terrifying new reality. Their bullets were having no effect. The handgun rounds, designed for encounters within a few yards, simply sparked and ricocheted off the suspect's makeshift armor. The police had brought pistols to a rifle fight. As more officers arrived, the scene descended into a full-blown war zone, broadcast live from news helicopters to a stunned nation. It was a horrifying mismatch of technology and tactics. The officers, products of an era that armed them for confrontations with criminals, were now facing an enemy armed and equipped for a military engagement. An officer would retrieve his Ithaca 37 pump-action shotgun from his vehicle, a weapon long considered the ultimate power tool in law enforcement. Loaded with standard double-aught buckshot, it was designed to be a devastatingly effective fight stopper inside of 25 yards. But here, with the suspects engaging from distances of 50 yards or more, the shotgun was next to useless. The 9 lead pellets in each shell would spread out into a wide, ineffective pattern, losing energy with every foot traveled. The few pellets that did strike the armored suspects were easily stopped. The officers were pinned down behind their own vehicles, which offered scant protection from the penetrating power of the 7.62 by 39mm and 5.56mm rifle rounds. They were outranged, outpowered, and catastrophically outgunned. The Battle of North Hollywood raged for 44 minutes, a lifetime under fire. In a desperate act of improvisation, LAPD officers were forced to commandeer several AR-15s from a local civilian-owned gun store just to be able to return effective fire. The final toll was staggering. 12 police officers and 8 civilians were wounded before the 2 gunmen were finally neutralized. But the real casualty was an entire doctrine of police armament. The shootout was a brutal, public execution of the idea that a handgun and a shotgun were sufficient tools for American law enforcement. For decades, the patrol car had been a symbol of safety and order. That morning, it became a symbol of vulnerability, a metal coffin in a war it was not equipped to fight. The live television feed didn't just show a robbery. It showed a systemic failure of equipment. It burned a single urgent question into the mind of every police chief in the country. How do we stop this from ever happening again? The search for an answer would lead them to a weapon that, until then, was almost exclusively the domain of the military, the black rifle, the AR-15. To comprehend the seismic shift caused by the North Hollywood Shootout, one must first understand the world that existed before it. The standard issue armament of the American patrol officer in the 1980s and mid-1990s was a study in tradition and calculated minimalism. It was a holy trinity of tools designed for a fundamentally different type of law enforcement. The first line of defense was the sidearm, which was in the midst of a slow transition from the iconic 6-shot, 38 Special or 357 Magnum revolver, a tool valued for its 6 for sure reliability, to the first generation of semi-automatic 9mm pistols. The second tool was the baton, a simple instrument for compliance and less lethal force. But for situations that required a significant escalation of force, for moments when an officer's life was truly on the line, there was the third, most powerful tool: the 12-gauge pump-action shotgun. Locked in a vertical rack between the front seats of nearly every patrol car in America, the shotgun, typically a Remington 870 or a Mossberg 500, was the undisputed king of police long guns. It was a weapon respected and often feared for its awesome, undisputed power at close range. The philosophy behind the police shotgun was straightforward. It was the ultimate problem solver for the most violent, close-quarters encounters. The mere sound of a pump action being cycled, that iconic shuck-shuck, was, and still is, a universally recognized acoustic symbol of imminent and overwhelming force. A psychological deterrent often powerful enough to end a confrontation without a shot being fired. But this power came with a set of severe and ultimately crippling limitations. The shotgun is a specialist, and its specialty is a very narrow one. Its primary ammunition, double-aught buckshot, pronounced double-aught, consists of a shell packed with 8 or 9 .33 caliber lead pellets. Firing a single round of buckshot is the equivalent of firing a 9-shot burst from a handgun simultaneously. At a distance of 7 yards, this cloud of lead creates a devastating, fist-sized wound channel. By 35 or 40 yards, however, that same cloud of pellets spreads out into a pattern 3 or 4 feet wide, losing energy and becoming both ineffective against a target and an extreme danger to any innocent bystanders in the vicinity. This was its first critical failure. It was a weapon with the effective range of a thrown rock in the context of a rifle fight. The alternative was to load the shotgun with a rifled slug, a single heavy 1-ounce projectile of solid lead. This effectively turned the shotgun into a short-range musket, extending its effective range out to perhaps 100 yards. But this solution presented an even greater danger in an urban environment: catastrophic overpenetration. A 1-ounce slug fired from a 12-gauge shotgun will not just go through a human target. It will go through the wall behind them, the next wall after that, and potentially cross the street. Furthermore, the shotgun suffered from a punishingly low ammunition capacity of 4 to 8 rounds, and reloading it under stress is a slow, clumsy process, requiring significant fine motor skill. The recoil is brutal, making fast, accurate follow-up shots a significant challenge for even well-trained officers. The police had a perfect tool for storming a fortified room, but on the open streets of North Hollywood, facing armored adversaries with rifles, they had brought a battering ram to an artillery duel. The fight had moved out onto the street, and the shotgun simply could not follow. In the aftermath of North Hollywood, as police departments scrambled for a solution, the AR-15 platform emerged as the definitive answer. To the public, conditioned by media headlines, it was often vilified as a high-powered assault weapon. But to firearms experts and law enforcement strategists, it was something entirely different. A highly engineered, brilliantly adaptable weapon system that offered a near-perfect blend of power, precision, and safety for the urban environment. Its superiority was not based on a single feature, but on a constellation of integrated design elements that solved nearly every problem an officer faced with a pistol or shotgun. The first and most misunderstood element is the 5.56 by 45 mm cartridge. Contrary to popular belief, it is not a high-power round. It is a small-caliber, high-velocity one. A typical 5.56 mm bullet is lightweight, often just 55 grains, compared to a 124-grain bullet for a 9 mm pistol or a 437-grain slug for a 12-gauge shotgun. Its genius lies in its speed. This high velocity provides two crucial advantages for law enforcement. First, it creates a very flat trajectory, meaning the bullet flies more like a laser beam than a thrown ball. For an officer under stress, this simplifies aiming immensely. They can essentially point and shoot at targets from 50 to 200 yards with minimal adjustment. Second, the lightweight bullet produces very low recoil, a soft, manageable push instead of the violent kick of a shotgun. This allows any officer, regardless of their size or strength, to fire multiple, precise shots in rapid succession, keeping more rounds on target to neutralize a threat quickly. But its most vital characteristic for police work is a paradox. In many situations, it is safer. Heavy, slow pistol rounds and shotgun slugs are notorious for overpenetration. They act like drills, punching through interior walls while remaining stable. The lightweight, high-velocity 5.56 mm bullet, by contrast, is designed to be unstable. When it strikes a solid medium like drywall, it immediately begins to tumble and fragment, shedding its energy rapidly and reducing the risk of exiting a structure and harming an innocent person. The second pillar of the AR-15's dominance is its ergonomics and modularity. Eugene Stoner's original design was remarkably forward-thinking. It is lightweight, and its controls, the safety selector, magazine release, and bolt catch, are placed exactly where the shooter's fingers would naturally be, making it fast and intuitive to operate under pressure. The adjustable stock allows the rifle to be fitted perfectly to officers of different heights and body types, and to be shortened when wearing bulky body armor. The true game changer, however, was the adoption of the MIL STD 1913 Picatinny rail system. This simple, standardized set of slots on the handguard and receiver turned the rifle into a lethal Lego set. It created a universal interface for accessories, allowing a department to tailor a single rifle for a multitude of tasks. The most important of these additions was the optical sight, specifically the red dot or collimator sight. This single device revolutionized police marksmanship. Instead of having to align a front and rear sight, an officer could now simply place the red dot on the target, with both eyes open, maintaining full situational awareness, and fire. This increased the speed and accuracy of the average officer tenfold. Add a high-intensity flashlight for positive target identification in the dark, and a vertical foregrip for better control, and the AR-15 transformed from a bare rifle into a complete integrated system for solving tactical problems. Underpinning all of this is the rifle's mechanical heart, Eugene Stoner's direct impingement gas system. Unlike the heavy gas piston systems found in rifles like the AK-47, where a solid rod pushes the bolt carrier, the AR-15's system is elegantly simple. It siphons a small amount of the hot propellant gas from the barrel and, via a thin steel tube, pipes it directly back into the bolt carrier group, using the gas pressure itself to unlock the bolt and cycle the action. The advantage of this design is its lightness and simplicity. There is no heavy piston and rod assembly moving back and forth, which contributes to the rifle's low recoil and excellent intrinsic accuracy. The trade-off, famously described as the system shitting where it eats, is that the hot, carbon-fouled gases are vented directly into the receiver. This makes the AR-15 a rifle that needs to be kept well lubricated and reasonably clean to run reliably. For the structured maintenance schedules of a police department, however, this was a perfectly acceptable compromise for the immense tactical advantages the platform provided. The shock wave from the North Hollywood Shootout did not dissipate with the last gunshot. It radiated outwards, forcing a painful and immediate reckoning in every police department in America. The incident served as a live-action, after-action report for the entire nation, and the conclusion was inescapable. The standard patrol officer was dangerously ill-equipped for the modern threat environment. The reaction from law enforcement agencies was swift and, in some cases, borderline frantic. In the immediate aftermath, the LAPD, the department at the epicenter of the crisis, issued an emergency authorization. For the first time, patrol officers were permitted and even encouraged to purchase and qualify with their own privately owned AR-15 platform rifles to carry on duty. This was a stopgap measure, a desperate attempt to plug a gaping hole in their tactical capability, and it created a patchwork arsenal of privately owned Colts, Bushmasters, and other commercial AR-15s appearing in the trunks of patrol cars. But a long-term, systemic solution was needed to rearm law enforcement on a national scale. That solution came in the form of a little-known but hugely impactful federal initiative, the Law Enforcement Support Office, LESO program, commonly known as the 1033 program. Originally established to assist in the war on drugs, the program's use exploded in the post-North Hollywood era. It created a pipeline that allowed the Department of Defense to transfer surplus military equipment to local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies, often for little more than the cost of shipping. Suddenly, the budget-strapped police departments of small towns and rural counties, which could never have afforded to purchase a new fleet of patrol rifles, had access to a massive inventory of military hardware. The most significant items in this pipeline were thousands upon thousands of M16 rifles, the select-fire military sibling of the semi-automatic AR-15. This program was the accelerant on the fire of change. While some departments bought new semi-automatic AR-15 carbines directly from manufacturers, the 1033 program was the force multiplier that put a rifle within reach of nearly every agency in the country, kickstarting the widespread adoption that would define the next decade. The arrival of these rifles, however, triggered a crucial evolution in police doctrine. Initially, the AR-15 was treated as a trunk gun. It was secured in a locked case in the trunk of the patrol car, designated as a special purpose weapon, to be deployed only in extreme circumstances, like an active shooter event. But officers and tacticians quickly identified a critical flaw in this thinking. A violent encounter happens in seconds. An officer pinned down by rifle fire does not have the luxury of time to exit the vehicle, move to the trunk, unlock a case, retrieve the rifle, and prepare it for action. The weapon needed to be as accessible as the officer's sidearm or shotgun. This led to the next great evolution, the adoption of the vehicle-mounted rifle rack. The rifle moved from the trunk to a secure, quick-access rack mounted vertically between the two front seats. This physical relocation of the weapon represented a monumental shift in philosophy. The AR-15 was no longer a reactive tool for a disaster in progress. It became a proactive, primary tool of everyday patrol. This change effectively democratized firepower within law enforcement. Historically, the rifle was the exclusive domain of the highly trained, specialized SWAT team. They were the surgeons of policing, equipped with heavy armor and specialized rifles, called in to handle the most dangerous, pre-planned operations. The patrol officer, by contrast, was the first responder, whose job was to arrive, contain the scene, and wait for the specialists. North Hollywood proved that containment was a fatal fantasy against a rifle-equipped threat. The new doctrine, centered on the instantly accessible patrol rifle, armed the first responder to not just contain, but to potentially end the threat. It didn't turn every patrol officer into a SWAT operator, but it gave them a SWAT-level tool to survive and win the first 5 critical minutes of a modern high-intensity gunfight. The widespread adoption of the AR-15 was not an accident, nor was it the only option available. In the wake of North Hollywood, police departments considered a range of alternatives, but it was the AR-15's unique combination of attributes that made it the undeniable victor. To understand why, one must compare it to its main rivals. Some agencies looked to pistol-caliber carbines, PCCs, like the venerable Heckler & Koch MP5, which was the darling of SWAT teams in the 1980s and 90s. The MP5 was controllable, compact, and surgically precise within 50 yards. However, it fired the same 9mm handgun ammunition as the officer's sidearms, offering no solution to the problem of defeating body armor or penetrating vehicle cover. In fact, slow, heavy pistol rounds are often more prone to dangerous ricochets and are less effective at penetrating intermediate barriers than the high-velocity 5.56mm. On the other end of the spectrum were the full-power battle rifles, chambered in .308 Winchester, 7.62 by 51mm NATO, like the AR-10 or M14. While these offered immense power and range, they were deemed entirely unsuitable for patrol work due to their heavy weight, punishing recoil that made rapid follow-up shots difficult for the average officer, and the extreme risk of overpenetration in any populated area. The AK platform, while famously reliable, lacked the AR-15's refined ergonomics, user-friendly controls, and, most importantly, its inherent modularity for easily mounting the optics and accessories that were becoming essential. The AR-15 was not just a rifle, it was the perfect compromise, a Goldilocks weapon that was just right. The true revolution, however, was not just in the hardware, but in the effect it had on the capabilities of the individual officer. The AR-15, when paired with a red dot optic, became a massive force multiplier. In law enforcement, success is measured in effective hit probability, the real-world likelihood of a stressed officer hitting their intended target. With a handgun, this probability plummets dramatically beyond 15 to 20 yards. The reason is simple physics and human biology. A handgun offers only 2 points of contact with the shooter, the hands, and its short sight radius amplifies even the slightest aiming error. A rifle, by contrast, provides 4 points of contact: firing hand, support hand, shoulder, and cheek, creating a dramatically more stable platform. When you add a red dot sight, which eliminates the need to align a front and rear sight, the cognitive load of aiming is slashed. An officer no longer has to focus on their sights. They can remain threat-focused, simply placing the dot where they need the bullet to go. The result is that a moderately trained officer with a red dot-equipped AR-15 can achieve a level of speed and accuracy at 100 yards that would be impossible for even a world champion-level shooter with a standard-duty pistol. This didn't just level the playing field, it tilted it decisively in favor of law enforcement. Ultimately, the AR-15 mounted in a patrol car is not a symbol of escalating force or so-called militarization. It is a tool of survival, a direct and logical response to a demonstrated threat. It is the physical manifestation of a lesson learned in blood on the streets of North Hollywood, that law enforcement can no longer afford to be outgunned by the criminals they face. The adoption of the patrol rifle was a fundamental recognition that the first officer on the scene of a violent crisis is, by definition, the most important person there. The AR-15 is the instrument that gives that officer the tactical ability to not just contain a threat, but to decisively end it, to protect the public, and to give themselves the best possible chance of finishing their shift and going home alive. It is the story of how a tragic and public failure forced a necessary evolution, forging a new standard of safety, built not on hope, but on capability.